That much to talk to people. We're on. Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the technical working group this afternoon. Officially, I guess, meeting number 14. And we've made significant progress. I know we're going to touch on this later, but just so everybody knows, the Broward MPO board approved the Safety Action Plan Executive Plan last Thursday, April 10th, 2025. Cheers and applause, everybody. And you're just cheering yourself, so appreciate it. This opens us up for our partners at Broward County to now pursue the 2025 SS4A implementation grant application for the Northwest 31st Avenue corridor. Any questions, please direct them to Scott Thurman. Because Richard isn't here, right? So, yeah. Oh, there you go. We'll want to talk to you also about getting your commission approvals on those for the different cities on the corridor. Anyway, we have a full agenda. I'm James Cromer. I'm a Deputy Executive Director at Broward MPO, also Project Manager for the Broward Safety Action Plan on the MPO side, with Fazil as the Deputy Project Manager. And then we have Minteng Lee here, who is the Deputy Project Manager on the Broward County side, as we are partners in this process. Minteng, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just want to echo the project manager from Broward County, Tony Huey's, what he said in the oversight board meeting this morning, that the MPO has accomplished a great milestone in this process, and we appreciate the leadership from me and Broward MPO in this regard, especially James and Fazil, and also the other MPO folks, and as well as the consultants. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we're not done, though. We got the approval done early in this process, and so we still have a few more months left on the contract. And so Christine's going to talk, and we'll be talking more about some of the things that will be going on as we continue to refine the recommendations, and as we prepare then to take the full, not just a summary document, but the full document to the Broward MPO again in the fall and the Broward County Commission for approval. Our agenda today, oh, I guess it's not posted though, so it is next after this. Oh, that's the slide I should have shown. Thank you. Okay, all right. So, as you all have been familiar with the 11 priority corridors, we're going to have Christine talk a little bit about what we're expecting to see out of that concept design process. Again, that's a detail that's not in the executive plan, but that will inform the fuller plan as we go forward. Then I want to talk a little bit about the implementation approach with our program ready criteria for the Broward MPO, which helps the projects get better able to be funded and constructed for design and construction. Ren Ruiz from Urban Health Partnership will talk about our community engagement approach, because that will be ongoing over the spring, summer, and fall. And then Christine's going to talk a little bit about some research that we've been doing. We haven't talked a lot about post-crash care or safer speeds and with partners and enforcement. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about the evolution of our committee role. Just an introduction. The Oversight Committee today was their last meeting officially, but the Oversight Committee will evolve, and we hope it will involve some of you also, that we need to be doing an annual report to our federal partners, reporting on the tremendous progress that we will have made over each year as we go forward. And so we need a committee to review that. So we'll talk a little bit about how we want to have you all potentially participate in that. So with that, if does anybody have any compelling bit of advice? Paula, don't give away any of the secrets from this morning. She sat in and listened, so.
Act like this is all new.
Okay, yeah. And there are some new items too. But if she raises her hand first, she doesn't get an answer first. Okay. All right. Any other comments? All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. So we'll start with the concept design process. As you know, we started off with our analysis to create our high injury network and our high risk network. So we created a scoring metric. Everybody asked me, how did you pick the 11? So I just kind of want to walk through kind of our process. Through that, we had a scoring criteria. We ranked the corridors. And then after that, we did an analysis of kind of like where they laid in the county, if there were already program projects, were they in design already? Were they just newly constructed? So we made sure that we didn't mess with anything that was in the program so we could select our 11. From there, we selected those. Then we did our initial analysis. We did a corridor safety analysis. We did an equity analysis, ownership of who owned what, which cross streets, looked at transit, looked at ADTs, we looked at speeds, all the good stuff to kind of get that initial feeling of what's going on in that corridor. Then we did our initial stakeholder meetings with the roadway owners, many of you in the room, so thank you for the time, to really understand what those local needs were, what projects had you done there, what projects were coming, what maybe enforcement opportunities you had seen done there. So really get a holistic view of what had happened to date. Then we went to the public and just did a public briefing on kind of what issues they were having, just over an aerial map, just told them where the crashes, KSIs were happening on the corridor and kind of listened to the stories of what issues they were having. Then we did an initial layout of countermeasures and used what we called an icon map. And we laid out countermeasures along the corridors and then met back together with our agency partners and had initial icon map meetings or countermeasure map meetings with each of our stakeholders on each of the corridors and kind of talk through, okay, we heard from the public that, you know, they were having to cross mid-block because the crosswalks are too far apart. So we added a mid-block crossing here, or, you know, those types of things, right? So talk through those, then we tweaked those, then we had another meeting with the agency partners to kind of, let's say, finalize to move into conceptual design. And we're able to kind of draft the corridor concept. Then we sent out those corridor concepts to our agency partners for review. Right after that, we went to the public and kind of laid those out and talked about kind of, we heard this, we saw this safety happening. This is what countermeasure we put in. So we're directly relating either data or local knowledge to the recommendations that we presented in those public meetings. And we pulled all those public comments, and now we are in the phase of kind of finalizing those concepts. In the end, we're just creating concepts. And the next part, and then, sorry, jump to the 11 corridors. Here's the 11 corridors. And then I put on the left kind of the owners. So on the right, you can see the diversification across the county. Blue are state roads, green are county roads, and red are cities facilities, excuse me. I get enough caffeine at lunch, I guess. And then on the left, you can see the owners, FDOT, Broward, Fort Lauderdale, Margate, Hollywood, and Deerfield. And so kind of what we're putting together right now includes kind of these 5 items. So we've got the concept design is going to be a role plot, as you saw at the public meetings that we presented. We're going to do a quantity takeoff with a cost estimate. We're also going to do a cost benefit assessment. We actually had a great meeting with the county yesterday to talk through our methodology for creating a BCA appropriate to the safe system approach and the Broward Safety Action Plan. So we're finalizing kind of that methodology as a tool for all of you to utilize on any future projects. Step 4 is obviously to take all those improvements and pull out the quick short-term ones and give you a list of here's some maintenance things you can do now, maybe some opportunities for quick build, and then obviously the long-term improvements and costs associated. And then put together a full report that says, this is all the tests that we did, public engagement, all of, you know, the whole thing, so that you have a full package. So that when James calls you and says, are you program ready? You can go, fund me, right? So hoping to give you a really great package that is very useful, so we can take this to the next step. As I mentioned, we're gonna create the phases for take each corridor and then phase it for quick action. And then so we can get to programming. And then kind of with that, I wanted to kind of hand it over to James to talk about program ready. So kind of the next step. Mr. Cromar? Oh, any questions? I think they're ready to hear from you.
We might get out of here early then, so. All right, so as we move forward for implementation of projects, the MPO has established a program ready process. And this is the process, again, I mentioned that will explain how we get projects in line for funding through the MPO processes. But there also might be projects that are happening at different levels. I think, Karen, you probably had experience where or Christopher, you could talk about this. Which cities have wanted to get projects in our MTP They're not necessarily something that we develop, but this kind of touches on that process too. There are ways that people can get projects in our funding cycle line that we don't necessarily come up with them. So I'm going to give you some background information, and then this will all come together in some of the graphics that come up later in this process. But the Broward MPO is a federal agency, and we're responsible for transportation policy and funding decisions that our board of elected officials make those decisions. And our core products are on the right side there. We have our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is every 5 years, and it's a 25-year horizon for planning. Then we have our list of priority projects, which takes, well, you'll see it in a second, but it takes those projects from the MTP, gets them in line for funding, which then gets into the Transportation Improvement Program, which is the TIP. Okay, so we're going to use those acronyms a lot. The ones on the left are more of our internal things, and we can talk a little bit more about those if you'd like to. We will talk a little bit about our Unified Planning Work Program, which is our budget, but that'll come up later. So as projects and different things go through our process, we establish a 25-year vision. The board recently approved the 2050 MTP, and it has a long list of projects of what our needs are, and then a much shorter list of what we have money for. So we have to do some prioritization of those projects as they go forward. Projects then move from the MTP to something that's our list of prioritized project. It used to be called the multimodal priority list. That name is changed to be more in line with some federal guidance. And so that list of prioritized projects then goes to our partners at FDOT. And I don't think any of you that are here today are dealing with it so much, but the FDOT people that have the money then will make assignments of the funds that are available from different sources to these projects. And so they'll see what the MPO has set as a priority, and they'll go in different categories and assign those funds in different ways. And we really appreciate the give and take. It's almost like a dance or a ballet that they're moving things around as different funds are available and different things happen. Just so you know, recently there was some funding at a federal level that got taken away. And so our partners in programming had to figure out how to fill the gaps with those projects. So it's an ongoing process, but we do, get to review that officially. So our board will then approve the list of prioritized projects. It goes to FDOT. They'll look at available funding, and then they'll send it back to us as a draft tentative work program. That's usually around November. Okay. We will review that, give comments. It goes back to the state, and then it comes back as an official transportation improvement program, which is usually July. Okay. And then the board approves that, and then the funding starts for different projects. And so every year we repeat the cycle with the LOPP and the TIP, and every 5 years we repeat the MTP process. Any questions so far? And I appreciate Christopher. I don't know if you did the graphic or. Okay. Okay. So it's a team effort there. So, oh, they're so saying, there you go. Okay. So as we talk about the MTP this year in the 2050, there was an adjustment of some of the assignment of categories. We consolidated certain things and ended up with 6 different categories. And this is the assignment of the funds that the MPO can decide where they go. We get about $30 million a year, $32 million a year that we can assign, but the state also supplements that funding in a lot of different ways, but we can choose to emphasize different projects. So with these 6 different categories, you'll see our favorite category today is the yellow one, that's safety. And so about 10% of those funds on an annual basis will go to safety projects. So about $3.2 million a year. And as Christine and team are developing those cost estimates for those corridor segments, it's the question of how far will $3 million go to cover some of these improvements. But that's where our partners at the state, county, and local level can help supplement those funds that we can help put in certain money, and other partners can make those projects happen. The current 2050 MTP does not have any of the projects from the safety action plan because the board approved the MTP in December and is looking to just approve the BSAP in April. But Christopher and team have left a placeholder so that the projects that come forward from the safety action plan can then step into the MTP and claim some of that money that's available for safety projects. Okay. Keep nodding your head, so I'll keep going then.
James, can I just add on to this slide really quick? So
Don't know. We'll see.
I'm gonna speak anyways, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and even though just 10% of our funds are specifically going towards safety projects, there are safety components in almost all of our funding pots. So don't just assume that we're only doing $3.2 million of safety. We are doing much more than that. It's just safety may not have been when we develop these funding pots, may not have been the forefront of many of these topics, but at the end of the day, people aren't safe and they can release our roadways either, right? So
And again, that's that mix of funds, different sources, different projects, different elements. And so, okay, so anyway, the basic idea though is that funds get in line and then we can move forward for getting those funded. So to become then part of this process with the MTP and the list of priority projects and the tip down there in the bottom, there's a little window, a little balloon there to the right that talks about incorporating program ready. So this helps us know if a project is ready to go. We had a lot of trouble and we've learned over the last few years with the MPO that a project is not just build bike lanes on this street. Okay. The project needs to have a strong definition. So it's a scope of work that's build 10-foot bike facility here, all the different details, this length and such. It needs to have a cost estimate. So a planning level, when we know that those numbers will change, things vary, but it gives us a scale of how much money might be available. We need evidence of jurisdictional collaboration. So Cypress Creek Road out here, the city of Fort Lauderdale participated in the project with MPO funding and FDOT design, and it's a county facility. So we needed to make sure all the partners were on board with that project. So if it's a city or a county, we will get a resolution of support for the project. And if it's through FDOT, we get a letter of consistency to show that FDOT is aware of what's going on in these projects. So for any of these projects to move forward, we need to make sure that they meet all 4 of these program ready components. Now, as we are going forward and introducing projects into the MTP, there's a formal amendment process, and we'll be working with Christopher and team to move the recommendations from the safety action plan into the MTP. And we ideally would have all of these program ready elements met before we do the amendment. The amendment process, we need to have information ready by November to then get into the following list of priority projects, which comes about in February. All these different cycles. So you don't have to memorize. There's not a test. The test, though, is making sure that we have evidence of the resolutions of support and partner collaboration. So Maksud, Karen, Eric, trying to think which other cities, but and even Broward County, that we have official resolutions to say, yes, we support the Northwest 31st Avenue project. And Karen, yes, we support the Sistrunk. Eric, yes, we support Southwest 10th. We need these. Oh, yes, that's right. Okay. Fort Lauderdale has segments all over. Parts of State Road 7 and part of Broward Boulevard also. So, yeah. So, but the point is to make sure that the local governments are aware and are supportive of these projects. And so that's something that we will probably want to talk to you more about in the next few months. I think there's an urgency with the Northwest 31st Avenue, Fort Lauderdale, Tamarack, Lauderdale Lakes, Lauderhill, Oakland Park. Yeah. So that we'd like to have a resolution of support for that. The county is the owner of that facility. The county commission has a resolution of support for that moving forward, but it would be beneficial to have your local elected officials aware. And we also like the idea of doing a resolution because that is an opportunity for the public to become more aware of what's going on. So it's not occurring behind closed. People are aware, they've had public meetings, they've contributed. Hey, it's moving forward in the process. And it's also a way to ensure that it's not just a staff idea. We had a problem a few years ago. One of our MPO board members was asking why all these projects were in our long range plan. And we said, well, your staff provided it. And they said, well, nobody talked to us, and they hadn't done the proper reviews and approvals. So that's something that we've learned that we want to avoid, to make sure that we're going through the right different approval processes. So with that, then, as we go forward, then we've adopted the plan. And now item number 2 is adding the safety action plan projects to the 2050 MTP. That then helps get them to move forward. And I guess we'll have to figure this out with all the different projects that we have 11 priority corridors. Will all those go forward in the amendment this year? Ideally, but can we get all the different pieces pulled together? If not, we can also do amendment process next year. But I think the most, and 31st is already in our MTP, correct? And we've already signed some funds, so we need to get more in there, so. So by getting more in there, we're not taking any money away from 31st.
Hello. 31st Avenue is represented in other programs. So the Roads for Family program, we have it in there, but not technically in the safety program.
Okay,
That project currently is in an outer year of funding. So the mechanism to get that one a little bit closer is to put it into the safety programs.
Okay.
With this resolution here, we're able to do that.
all right, that's good to know, thanks. Nuance. All right. And then as we talk about implementation, and Christine talked about this last month, there are also other ways at your local level where you can work with your capital improvement programs to get projects funded. I know a lot of you are in your budget process right now, so we might have missed a cycle because we don't have everything ready to go. We'll have the corridor concepts by May. If some of your local levels, if it's possible to get them in line for funding, that's great. If not, we understand that it might take another year. And then Christine will talk maybe a little bit more about the Safe Street Design Manual and helping, as Fazil mentioned, get safety as a component of all kinds of other projects too. So with that, are there any questions?
As I remember, for 31st Avenue, in the past, we sent support letter to county administrator from city manager from
Okay.
all 5 cities. At the beginning, we had a resolution of support for the study. There was a few years back, I cannot remember what year, but that was for PTEF. Now, this time, you don't need support letter. You need a resolution from the city commission.
We would recommend that at this point. And I think based on your city response, I think they'd appreciate your giving them the chance to give support for that. So technically, because Broward County is the owner of the corridor, we do have the appropriate letter, but this will just be more evidence and more supportive. It'll save you somebody in 2 years coming saying, I never heard about this. So
Okay, thank you.
Minting?
Thank you, James. I'd like to ask Chris to clarify what you just said. I think what you said about 31st probably have a different scope and probably have a different price tag in your plans at this point. So there's probably some revision required. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Oh, that's the whole answer? Okay. Hey, Richard, we're talking about you kind of. Part of what's happened with 31st also is we had initial planning level estimates. And then as we've gone forward and are looking for the actual construction, surprise, surprise, the price has gone up. So. All right. Any other comments or questions then? So as we oh, go ahead.
The same thing for 19th Street, or it's going together, or you're going to put it in 2 different resolution?
Is there a preference, Christopher, if we do one resolution or 2?
I would like to ask what the difference between the 2 resolutions are. Is it one from the city, one from the county?
No,
or-
2 different corridor segments. So 31st Avenue and 19th.
So they're 2 separate projects then?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you need a resolution of support for each of them,
Okay, thank you.
unless you're taking both projects to the same commission meeting, and then you would just do a resolution of support for both projects at the same time.
It will go to the same commission meeting. That's why I was asking if we
Oh.
can combine both.
Yes,
No,
yeah,
or
that's what we did for all the other MTP projects for getting it adopted. Yep.
Thank you.
And when we get to that point, we will provide a recommended template of what the language should be, like we do for CSLIP or REV or for complete use master plan, or what used to be called complete use master plan projects.
What do you think the timeline is for that, when you'll need it?
So we would want it before November. And I guess it's a question also of how much detail the city needs. So we will have the corridor concept designs packaged by May.
Okay.
Sorry?
Initial May.
Okay, sorry, initial in May, so finalize in July. So I guess it's a question of what level of detail your city needs.
So that's plenty of time. That's fine.
Oh, okay.
The 31st Ave, is the application going in May? And so you need it
Due end of June.
end of June. Okay.
I don't know that we need it so much for the application. The county might want letters of
Letter
support,
That letter support's easier.
whereas a resolution is part of the process for program ready.
Okay.
Yeah, and if, and just depending upon how your own, city commissions, work, if you're able to put a placeholder for now and then we can work backwards from that date, or if, you all think it's more appropriate to wait for the concept, the concept plans to be finalized and then move forward, just to let us know whichever one's your preference.
All right, anything else?
The letter of support is easy, but when you talk about resolution, it goes to city attorney and without their review, I cannot have any placeholder for that. So for the initial phase, if it is, if you can go by the letter of support, that's very easy for us.
And I think also the previous documentation that you had,
Yes.
I don't want to take Scott's and Richards and Minting's place and Tony's with the application, but they'll probably want to gather different documentation of support. And showing that 31st Avenue came from a planning process, that's probably part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because we're,
Oh, there you go.
yeah, just because it's gonna have to go to our board for ultimate approval, right, for the application, right? Because we own the road, or would it be that the MPO that we don't have to go?
I would ask your city,
I'm
your county
thinking
administration.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't want
so-
to give you the wrong answer.
right, but no requirement from your end.
No, we approve the plan and we just need to submit a form that shows that the plan meets all the requirements.
Yeah, so we
Yeah,
could get,
that's right.
because based on some of our other grant applications, we just get the county administrative support,
Okay.
approval along with budget.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the way we work that out, but didn't know if you needed it.
And just a nuance also, the grant agreement that the Broward MPO signed with FHWA for the safety action plan. I was thinking that we took it to the board. And all we did was took an administrative item to the board saying that we had signed it.
Right.
So that may be, the board has authorized our executive director to do certain things. And it may be similar with the county level. I don't know that the board needs to approve the county administrator
Yeah.
signing the agreement, but I would
We
recommend you
need
look into
to
that.
flush it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, it went through legal review, definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. All right.
A lot of details. Yeah. I'm glad there's a team working on it at the county. So, all right. Anything else then on that? All right. Let me just mention also, we had some conversations with our partners at FDOT. And so we don't expect, FDOT doesn't have a board. FDOT is not going to take a vote to approve certain things. But we did talk about how to do the appropriate review processes with our partners at FDOT. And so it's a question of making sure that you all have the opportunity to review and provide comments, and and then we'll take it forward from there to see, is this, we don't need something from FDOT saying it's okay. We do need something saying it's not okay. So we'll work through that process with Ron and get that taken care of. So Ron Kariba. All right, anything else? Yeah, this part isn't as exciting as the fun visionary stuff. Now it's the nuts and bolts of getting things done. So we'll just keep moving forward with that. Let me hand it then over to Ren.
Good afternoon, everybody. So some of you, I know quite a bit of you just from coordination throughout this whole project. And, we've met some of you and some of you don't know me. So I'm Ren Ruiz. I'm with Urban Health Partnerships. We're a nonprofit that was looped into the project team to help facilitate the community engagement. So I'll be talking about that today and just what that process has been throughout this whole time for this effort. So to talk about our timeline and different activities we've been working on. So in September, we started to hire community liaisons. Urban Health Partnerships does things a little bit different in that we hire people from the communities in which we want to conduct outreach to really inform outreach strategies and conduct that outreach in a very authentic way that responds to how the community likes to receive information. So we did that. We hired 3 community liaisons for this project. Then we had 2 rounds of public meetings, as many of you know, and have been very involved with helping us plan, with the first round being in September and October of 2024. And then the second half, the other 9 being in February. So we have now finished those. That was 18 public meetings in total for this. And then what we have starting now from April through really beyond June is going to be the Safety Roadshow. So I'll be talking a little bit more about what those next steps are going to be as well. So what is a community liaison? As I mentioned, there's somebody that we hire from within the community. They represent the community from which we're trying to learn from. And so these are Broward County community liaisons that are based in different areas of Broward. And throughout this process, in the 9 areas of the priority project corridors, they got to know each of them, 3 of these areas. So they were each assigned different areas to really sort of drill in and get to know it. And what they did is, based on each of their different existing networks and what their strengths are, really guide and carry out that authentic community engagement with a lot of stakeholders. In that, we're often pushing the edges of how we can diversify who we're hearing from. So we're always asking ourselves, who have we not heard from yet? So the community liaisons works together and with our staff to make sure that we're reaching out to not only their existing networks, but almost like in a capacity building fashion, learning, okay, where can we go next that we haven't hit yet, right? Which community groups can we expand to? What areas have we not touched, for instance, the churches with, as examples of that. So we've done that throughout this whole project timeline as well. Then when they're out there, they're learning through often one-on-one conversations. They're out there canvassing, going business to business. They're going to other community meetings. They're going to literally into the churches or parks, libraries, and lots of different places, which I'll cover some of that as well, to have these one-on-one conversations. We record them. They actually write down their notes and share them. And we've been sharing a lot of that information with the project team, and we'll continue to do that throughout this whole process. And what they learn becomes information that we can identify themes from. So I'm going to go over some of the themes actually that we have been hearing from everybody. And the other thing that they're doing also during that is informing them about the project. What is the project? How can they get involved? How can they also help guide and shape this Broward Safety Action Plan? How can they participate in the decision making? And so I'll go over how they did that as well. So the community liaisons, they're our initial connection to the community. And as I mentioned, there's capacity building. Many of these community liaisons have worked with me before. They understood a little bit about mobility, about roadway safety. However, even throughout this process, part of the beauty of this is that there's also a capacity building for them to continue to improve how they're talking to communities and able to do it in a way that is accessible to their audience. So they were communicating in multiple languages to multiple ages, different kinds of stakeholders with different kinds of expertise. And so they really had their own kind of capacity building throughout this whole thing. And then they're getting integrated, right? Like they're also guiding a lot of the things that happened during the project, including, they took time to review the Broward Safety Action Plan. They were working with the communications team on what these materials were going to look like, comments about the website, and all sorts of stuff. So they really get sort of plugged in lots of different ways into the project. So here's where I'll show a little bit about them. So these are the 3 that we hired from the communities. So Louis speaks in both Haitian and English, and he was able to conduct a lot of that outreach in both of those languages, sometimes completely in Haitian Creole, and is more familiar with the South Broward area. So we kept them around there and around downtown Fort Lauderdale. Then Brittany is from, I think around like Plantation was her most, sort of a lot of the central areas. And so you might have seen her at the Hollywood and the West Broward project meetings. Brittany has been with us for a while and has a real knack for digital outreach and virtual outreach. So she was reaching out to a lot of businesses along the corridor, researching each of their individual emails, personalizing emails to them to get them to come out to the meeting. Carlos is somebody who was very experienced with canvassing in his past before even joining UHP. He was brought on board for this project and was great in talking to a lot of the business owners in some of the northern areas, in particular in Spanish. So he would go and, be very comfortable in talking in bilingually to everybody and being able to get into the one-on-one conversations very well, and was very good at being able to like hold those conversations and report back to us. So just a little bit about our team. So what did they talk about? First, they were prioritizing, especially at the beginning with the public meetings, right? Trying to get the awareness out there about what these meetings were going to, like what they could expect, when they were, and all of that. So even though they had like flyers, they were going a little bit beyond that. Traditional public meetings, a lot of people kind of like, don't really get excited about them. So we were talking to people, we were talking to the community liaisons about how can we message this to get people in. So prioritizing, like, that we're going to highlight this as an interactive format. There's going to be activities, focusing on that there's opportunities for their input to actually shape the plan and how that might be. And then talking about some barriers to attending a meeting, right? Everybody's like, well, that's going to be during my dinner time. I've got my kids. All right, dinner will be provided. So every single one of these meetings made sure to have that so that it's not a problem. And then there was also children's activities available so that it can occupy the kids while the parent was, just listening to the meeting. So that was also something that was talked about in these one-on-one conversations with folks and in the emails to all the different businesses and, community groups and whatnot. Then we were also just in general talking about the project, right? What is the objective of the project? Why is it happening? Who's funding it? All of the questions that we get. So the community liaisons, we've spent many meetings with them just talking about going through everything in the website, having them really learn about the ins and outs of this project and where it comes from, so that then they can go and have those conversations on the ground. So that was a big part of their capacity building too. And then through that project website, being able to pull out, they each had tablets, they could go out and like talk to people. And they had pamphlets too for people that don't like to go on tablet. A lot of the older adults don't like to. And we're able to, get people to do pledges, talk to people about how they can go onto the Broward County map and make a comment anywhere they want to. Or if they had heard of any situation in which somebody had lost someone to a crash, then they could make a dedication and they showed them how. Right. So those were all tools that were there and available in a lot of what they were conversing about. So I'm going to share a little bit about what were the main things that we did hear from the community members in those discussions. Now, through the project, we've engaged 178 individuals throughout Broward County. And these are, I want to just point out, these are one-on-one conversations. This is different than like how many flyers we handed out and all that. So this is like, they were noting what the conversations were, what they were specifically hearing from people. So one of the main things that we heard is concerns over speeding and aggressive driving. It was very frequently on, well, they're trying to get through here quickly, or they're zooming through here. Specific locations of crashes and near miss hotspots, right? So knowing that, like, where exactly those locations were, but also the behaviors behind them. So they were observing what was happening between the different cars and in the interactions, and able to get very detailed about that. Where exactly speed control solutions would be needed and why. So they can go in front of a school and talk to me and point out on maps and whatnot, where exactly they said that should be. Is it going to be on this side or that side of whatever intersection and whatnot, depending on the kids' routes. They can talk specifically about the behaviors and patterns there. And then what repairs are needed to the infrastructure if they knew of something, and what were the specific challenges that they were experiencing or observing as pedestrians, as bicyclists, as transit users who are often pedestrians or bicyclists too. We heard a lot from older adults who struggle to see clearly at night. So in areas with poor lighting, there's a feeling of losing independence when, like, I would hear it often of like, I'm scared to drive at night now. I'm not able to go out anymore. And there's a real strong feeling of, I feel like that was the comment that always hit home with me the most. But that was something we heard a lot when we were engaging folks. Extreme heat while walking to and from transit stops, right? These sidewalks are long. It's maybe a while before you get to, you know, the next side of the block to be able to cross, and with no canopy. So that's a big thing. A desire for more signalized pedestrian crossings. We had a lot of positive feedback of people saying, I love that signalized pedestrian crossing that was put in X or Y location. Right turn conflicts with pedestrians who are trying to cross, who have the right of way, and yet the cars are going anyway. Saying that there's a need for closing the gaps or expanding the pedestrian and bike networks. A need for longer pedestrian crossing times. If they're having a rush, they're trying to beat the clock. And then a need for increased regulation of e-scooters and e-bikes, you know, noting that those are frequent obstacles in their paths. All right, so these are just some images of the different meetings that we've held over the past year and our team in the center there. So we often had giveaways and lots of project information. We, you know, help them feel welcome right at the beginning there. And then you'll see there some images of the interactions. So, and you guys were there at a lot of these, so you know them. But for those of you who may have not been there, you know, with or aren't as familiar, just making sure to have those conversations with them at the table, talking about a map and really engaging everybody in a group discussion. We were doing that frequently. The community liaisons were engaging folks in conversations. We were engaging people into how to interact with things like the boards on the safety countermeasures and explaining what some of these were, or just asking them what they thought and learning from that. So, so those were, I think, very successful. Some of the other outreach activities that happened during this time, as many of you were involved with, we were coordinating with city staff, with either you or your communications team, on getting some social media postings, e-blasts, newsletters, many different ways that got done. We were also working with the community liaisons on getting some guidance on the outreach materials. So making sure to know, like, hey, like, you know, this website, you know, giving that positive feedback, like, thank God it was able to like be in Haitian, Creole, and Spanish and whatever other languages, but also shaping like the flyer so that we can we get those in those languages too, right? So that was them. Shaping what they look like, what were the images on there, what was the messaging on there, shaping everything from like drafting an email together. We would sit there and like, what's going to be what the business owner receives. So, so that was a big part of how they get plugged in there. Then stakeholder mapping and direct outreach. A lot of what we do with them also too is, as I mentioned, we're leveraging their existing networks and existing strengths with certain networks, but we're going beyond that and constantly asking, who else have we not heard from? So I'm just kind of highlighting here some of the big things we were focusing on as far as like who we constantly like were in contact with. So the community centers and libraries, right? Because those are already hubs. HOAs and civic organizations in the various neighborhoods. Community forums, groups, or nonprofits, and that includes things like Nextdoor, Facebook groups, you know, for living in Oakland Park, or the Margate Friends, and all these other ones. Nonprofits in the area, or community groups like Better Streets Broward, and getting onto their Discord server and being able to chat with them about every little thing happening. Businesses and churches along each corridor, the various schools, colleges, or universities, emailing, you know, the various people throughout the different school district schools, but also, you know, FAU and NOVA. And then older adult groups and centers, right? So being able to, we held a meeting even at an older adult center. So just some of the highlights there. And then, of course, as I mentioned, this is multilingual outreach and a combination of both virtual and in-person analog type stuff. Print materials as well as tablets, right? So always trying to diversify the kind of ways we do outreach and the materials we use. All right, so the Safety Roadshow, and I know it says April to June, but as I mentioned, we're going to try to go beyond that. So we're going to be attending at least 10 events across Broward County to share about the messaging of the Broward Safety Action Plan. Right now, we're planned to be this Saturday at the Autism Family Fun Day in Pompano Beach at the Youth Sports Complex. We're also planned to be at the Earth Fest in Sunrise. And now, one thing is, if you all know, this is where I kind of reach out to you. If you all know of any events, especially if they happen to align in roadway safety, we're already eyeing, you know, the public safety event being held by Broward Sheriff's Office. Somebody else at the Oversight Committee shared about another community safety event. If you know of any events that make sense for us to be there, or that would just be very aligned or fitting for us, let us know. Even though we can get plugged in and research a lot and touch base with a lot of people, you guys are even more plugged into things in your particular areas. And we are trying to hit on areas that are beyond some of the priority project corridor areas that were already included. But if it happens to be that that is what makes sense, especially if it's a regional event, like throw it at me anyway. So let me know if you know of anything, but we will be posting those dates whenever we do confirm them onto the website to share where the safety roadshow will be. And we expect that that's going to be happening in July and August as well. So I'm going to share a little bit about what we will be doing there. So we're going to be providing a lot of different resources. So for one, the pamphlets that you've been seeing that talk about the Broward Safety Action Plan that are in the back that we've had at every meeting, we're going to continue to give those away. Those seem to be very impactful whenever we've given those away of all the materials, I'd say. But then also the postcard that has the link that allows you to interact with everything. So that's going to be something we continue to have there. We'll continue to have giveaways as well, but we're now going to start to have a few other activities too to make this a little bit more interactive whenever we are there. So including having the tablets ready to go to get people to do their pledge, having them printed as well, having the ability to map the concern and talk people through that. So it's similar to some of the stuff that was happening at the public meetings where we were walking people through those processes. But we'll be doing it at the roadshow too. The safety dashboard is a new addition, and that has been a really wonderful addition to the project website. And so we're going to be showcasing that at the safety roadshow too. So that's something new that'll be happening in the engagement. And then we have also purchased a pair of impairment goggles to mimic what happens when your blood alcohol content is above the legal limit. And so, that's an activity that people can do, or we just, depending on where the site is, have them walk a line, have them try to pick up a certain object that, messes with their space depth perception. So that's always an interesting activity that aligns with roadway safety. But then for some of the younger children, also we have lots of crossword puzzles, word search, just to have an opportunity to get the kids to be occupied and to participate while we're able to talk to adults, for instance. But then doing the safety pledge, a lot of those there are very kid friendly. And then lastly, the Broward MPO has done some of these before, the Draw Your Dream Street, where it's almost like a coloring book with the street. You get to imagine what do you want on your road. And then it all gets put together with little like clothespins and tied up on the tent. So we'll be doing that wherever there is a tent or wherever there's an opportunity to put it at the front of the table, to be able to put it together. It's got roundabouts and curves and all sorts of stuff. So we'll be doing that as well. All right. Does anybody have any questions at all? Yeah.
I wanted to let Leah know with Miramar, we got the information. One of the events was full. We couldn't get in. I don't know if Sal told you this morning. Yeah. So we appreciate the idea, but we weren't able to get in on that. And I think if you go back one more also, some of these events that we have here are good. It'll be a chance to get exposure, but I think we're looking to do ones that are great. So there's something that's tied to Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That's people that are going to talk about safety. Or there's something coming up. Usually Hallandale Beach does something in August for back to school and addressing safety. That'd be a great one too. So we're going to go to these events, and I've talked to Ren about getting some feedback, the good, the bad, and we want to fine tune, but we hope to be able to do a number of events through the spring and summer and fall.
Yes.
Brad Salisbury, DOT. The 178 number quoted, was that the total like in-person attendees across all meetings?
That does not include the meeting attendees. That's literally outside of the meetings, the one-on-one conversations done during canvassing, or often it doesn't even include community meetings they might have attended if there was like 20 people there. It's like small group conversations or one-on-ones.
Okay. The meeting attendance.
That was, I don't know the actual number. I have the numbers on my computer. I don't know them off the top of my head, what they were. I don't know if anybody else remember, but I mean, we did see, what I can share is we saw there was a couple of obstacles at the first round, which was the hurricanes happened and caused about half the meetings get canceled. Right. And so that was a big kicker there. And what we saw in the second round is sometimes the meetings we were just gauging from looking at it, but almost about doubled in attendance by the second round, because we just had that much more awareness, and lack of obstacles. So there was that. The final numbers, I don't know them off the top of my head, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
So the dinner provided, DOT holds a lot of public meetings. I don't think we've ever done that. That's like a new high bar but how did you exactly how'd that work out? And how did they have to schedule it ahead of time and say, I'm gonna be there for it? Like, walk me through the logistics.
So dinner, not in that regard was provided, but
Okay,
we
food.
had food
Yes.
provided. And if people happen to eat the food during their evening dinner or evening meal time, would consider it a dinner,
Like,
but it
you
was more
message that
we
ahead of
provided.
time, like there will be food provided?
Yeah, so the community liaisons, we're talking to people because one of the things as a community engagement nonprofit, we hear it all the time. That's during dinner time. I've got the kids, like it's a barrier. So what do? We try to reduce those barriers, and that's one of the ways. And we were providing buffet style, right? So you go and you get it if you want to. And a lot of people did. And it just solves that problem. And although we weren't purchasing huge amounts, it doesn't have to be a lot. And I was often scaling back what I purchased based on it's just having the option available. So I scaled back what I was purchasing too and all that. I never ended up having to throw away anything because if it doesn't even go to the attendees, even whoever's at the community center working gets leftovers for the next day for lunch, right? The library staff, whoever it is. So it felt like an easy thing to do to take that worry off and that burden off of a family, you know.
Part of your question, Brad, there's different guidance based on the different funding. And so this was specifically federal FHWA funds, and they have a public, I can't remember the name of the document, but outreach procedures. And in that, there's the thing there, and I'm mentioning this for future reference for anybody else too, that if there is a pattern or if there's a custom in the area to provide food at meetings, then we could use some of our funding for food. I know we always have an issue with providing food with the money that we get through FDOT. And so I'm not sure if the controls are a little different at the state level. And I don't know at the city level if you can provide food or not. You can? Really? Always? Okay.
Yeah, we provide snacks, not the food the way she had at the meeting in our city.
Yeah.
We normally don't do that, but we always provide some kind of snacks,
Okay. And
water.
And then your other question though, Brad, I want to expand on that, the number of people. So we wanted to do multiple types of approach. We recognize that a public meeting, if that is your only outreach, you're going to get limited input. And personally, my years of working in public involvement, it doesn't seem right when they say, well, we took a vote at the public meeting. Well, that just represents who was at the meeting. It doesn't, who knows if it represents the broader community or not. So with that though, we did a variety of different outreach. So in Plantation, we went to the Gateway
The Gateway Advisory Meeting.
and then they had a Midtown Advisory meeting. In Hollywood, we went to some of the neighborhood associations. We did the walking audits with representatives from different city departments and from other agencies too. So there were a variety of different ways that we were getting input. So I just wanted to emphasize that it wasn't just people at the public. Lost the mic again. There it is. It wasn't just people at the public meeting that guided it. We got input from a variety of we met with the city staff. We met with a variety of people that way. We do have a few people online. I didn't mention it before. We have Rachel Solomon, Desiree Curry, and Sasha Lovello are three representatives from health departments. By the way, I don't know if they realized we've had some issues with Zoom, so we may or may not have a meeting recording when this is all done. So pay close attention to everything.
Yeah,
Yes.
so Sasha, can you unmute yourself if you would like to speak? I see that your hand was raised.
You don't know. Can you hear me now? Can you
Yes.
hear me? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure, so I put it in the chat, but we are planning a national walk, bike, and roll to school day on May 16th in Pompano, near the hospital. So is that something you guys would want to participate in?
Please tell us more. Yeah, well, so Ren, you have the contact information, I believe.
And what was the name again here?
This is Sasha Lovello.
Got it. Okay, I'll note it. Thank you.
Sasha, since you're on, are you able to see us on the recording and were the slides changing?
Wait, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Are you visually able to see us and are the slides changing?
Oh, yes, it's fine.
Zoom somehow went down, we thought, so we couldn't tell.
Now it's working fine for us. I'm here with Desi. We're both here.
And by the way, thank you for those of you that did submit events like you all. So thank you. You know, there was quite a bit of you that submitted some stuff for us to inquire about. So some of them have been full so far though. So yeah, again, if you have more suggestions, especially as you learn about them, because some of you all pointed to the city calendars, which don't yet have many events up yet for like May, June, July, and lots of them in all April. But you know, we'll keep checking in, but if you know of something in the works before it's posted there, like that'd be awesome. So just keep us in mind. Any other questions on the community engagement? All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Ren. All right, we're doing good on time. An hour. All right. All right, so really overall, we've talked a lot about re-engineering our streets through the safe system approach, but we haven't talked a lot about enforcement or post-crash care. And so I just wanted to touch on it briefly about how our plan currently is informing. Is that Sherry? Okay. I'm really excited to have Sherry here. Sherry, would you mind introducing yourself? Yeah. You get to click the mic button on your screen.
Hi, my name is Lieutenant Sherry Kahn. I, with Hollywood Police Department, oversee our traffic unit, special events, details, and school speed enforcement program.
Thank you so much for being here. So because we're going to talk about a little bit, touch on enforcement, I invited her to speak about the work they're doing in Hollywood and to answer any questions since I'm not an enforcement professional, but wanted to give you just an overview of kind of how we've integrated those two topics into the plan and then have a conversation about are there other opportunities. So of course, first we'll talk about the safer speeds on the dial. The first question is kind of how is the Broward Safety Action Plan supporting enforcement agencies? And through our development of the high injury network and the high risk network, we have those maps available. Through our safety dashboard, I don't know if you've had a chance since our last meeting, since Fossil showed it to us, if you've been able to dive into it, but there's toggles where you can toggle on that high injury network, the high risk network. You can also overlay all the KSI crashes on top of it so that you can understand kind of where your hotspots are specifically in the neighborhoods or the communities where you want to focus. A second bullet here is around our schools. Our school zones have enforcement, morning and evening. A lot of times we have about 300 schools in Broward County. I don't know that all of them get covered every single day. And so having an opportunity to understand where the needs are based on our KSI data versus where our schools are, it's also a tool, right? So using those tools to maybe inform your local traffic enforcement of where the greatest hotspots are. So I thought that was another opportunity. One other thing is we have the top 5 crash types in Broward. I don't know if you guys picked up a new pamphlet. This is a little bit revised, but this beautiful dial on the inside, the number 1 is left turn crashes, deadliest. So really using this information, maybe to do targeted traffic enforcement or safety enforcement. Again, you can go to the safety dashboard. You can click on left turn crashes, City of Fort Lauderdale daytime, and you'll get a map, right? And it'll show you where you need to go specifically to enforce left turn activities, right? And we have that for every single crash type in our system. So you can do a lot of different queries so that we can work together to understand where we can focus our limited resources, right? And so I just wanted to show that like that's a discussion that I would love for each of you to have with your enforcement counterparts at your agencies. And I appreciate you being here, Lieutenant. So, okay, we'll meet after. We'll do a seminar on how to use it. Are there any other ideas of how to use this data? You guys are sitting in the seat every day and hearing from your constituents and your residents every day. Any other ideas that come to mind? If not, I can move on. No pressure. The school safety enforcement cameras, obviously were allowed through Florida statute last year. I got this, Carmelo was nice enough to share this list of the 5 cities that he has on record: Hollywood, Deerfield, Coconut Creek, Plantation, and Davie. I know Fort Lauderdale is thinking about doing them soon. Any other cities or agencies that you guys are aware of? So maybe 6. Okay. So these are the ones that are coming on board. My understanding of the process, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Carmelo, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just so that we understand the process, my understanding is you have to adopt an ordinance, then you procure a vendor, and then you have to do a revocable license agreement. Then you put together plans. Okay, I'm gonna get through it and then you can correct it. Engineering plans, then you go to construction, then you do a 30-day warning period, then you do enforcement. Okay, Carmela.
Carmelo Curtizolo, Broward County Traffic. Just the revocable license agreement, that's only on county roads.
Oh, okay. I should have
So
put,
the cities, the only thing the cities are submitting to the county are for staff to review that there's no conflict with the existing school zone signs.
Okay.
So the city's already adopted their ordinance by the time they get into procurement and when they submit those plans. So really it's a quick process on our end. They basically, that's why Hollywood already has theirs implemented.
Okay.
They've only have theirs on the city roads. They're pending the ordinance from the county, which is on April 22nd meeting, which is next week. And then the revocable license agreement will come after. So we have pending RLAs with, I think it's Davie, Plantation, and Hollywood.
so April 22nd, the Board of County Commissioners is going to approve
Not sure if it was approved. I know there's discussions.
this.
There's a draft that's being moving forward.
And then,
So right now that's being put, it's on the agenda for the 22nd.
okay, so in the best case, it would be like approved, we'll say approved. And then the following week, you could start approving license agreements.
Yeah, the revocable license agreement has to be redrafted to whatever the language in the ordinance. So
Right.
that might, the attorney's office is actually gonna have to revise it and then send it to the city attorneys. So that, you know how that is. It's gonna be a typical, probably like a month or so between the attorneys going back and forth.
Do you expect it to have to go back to commission?
No,
Okay.
it won't go back. The ordinance won't go, the revocable license agreement, I think, is signed at county administration level.
Excellent. Maybe as early as end of May, maybe we could see something.
Possibly.
Excellent.
But that's only county roads, so.
Right.
Yeah, the majority of the school zones, at least what's been submitted is on the city road.
Right.
So those are all moving forward.
So let's talk about City of Hollywood. And Lieutenant, I'll run through this and then I'll let you answer questions. Got to speak with the Hollywood team, and they mentioned that they have 11 that are active, 11 school zones that are active, 3 that are in the warning phase. So they do a 30-day warning phase before they do active enforcement. They have 4 that are in final construction, about to be into the warning phase, and then 5 more that are permitting, some awaiting what Carmela mentioned, the revocable license agreement that'll hopefully come this summer. For a total of 23 school zones, they're hoping to have active this year. The way they're ticketing is 11 miles over 15-mile-an-hour school zone during flashing hours, and then between flashing hours, they're able to enforce 11 over posted speed. So if the speed goes up, let's say posted is 35, then they're ticketing at 46 and above. And then all those tickets, I understand, are $100 each, whether you're going 11 over or 20 over, you're still getting just a $100 ticket. And from what I understood, they did some before counts before they turned on the cameras, and they've done some after counts of the 11 school zones. And they're seeing a 91% decrease in speeding over 11 miles per hour before and after. So really good before and after data. And then how these programs are funded, I don't know, Lieutenant, if you want to speak to that or.
Well, through our vendor, there's the agreement there, and obviously you're locked into a period of time for equipment. But the program does pay for itself over that period of time. So The only thing we're out right now is the staffing needed to push this program forward. And we're already starting to see the monies come back to support those hours to get things up and running.
And with the cameras you have in place right now, how many staff do you need?
Well, we're a very small unit. We are waiting to hire a full-time tech for that, digital evidence technician for that. Right now, the person in place, we plan to oversee a lot of the digital side of the house. Right now, they're honed in on this, getting it up and operational. So they're 40 hours a week plus.
And how's the program been received by the community?
Well, you always have those that are against it.
Right.
But to see the decrease in the speeding, to actually pay more attention to your school speed zones, has been very informative. One thing that we're still trying to push for is uniformity across our school zones, because surprisingly, some of them look quite different. I know that one of the big reasons we chose the vendor we did was that agreement that was there to put a speed feedback sign ahead of those zones through all of them, so that you did give that person, that driver, the opportunity to recognize what they were doing before they entered that zone. And that's kind of won some people over. I have to say that was a good idea. It's nice to have, but you'll still have some that will fight those citations. And unless for some sort of legality that's came up, they're losing on that side. We're pushing those through, and they are ultimately paying the citations.
So quick question regarding the citations. In some of the conferences that we've attended and some coordination that we've had with other agencies around the country, some agencies have moved towards for speed enforcement, not specifically school zones, but speed enforcement in general as a civil ticket rather than traffic ticket or traffic citation. What kind are we doing for Hollywood, I guess?
It is not attached to their driving history or their record. So if you'd want to call it the civil citation, it is a flat fee, $100. I mean, obviously, if they contest it, then court costs and all those things go into play there. If they should lose their case that way. But that's
Okay. No, thank you.
I thought it was only ticketable during the school flashing hours.
no, the statute
Really?
permits for 30 minutes prior, and some of them, because you have multiple schools within the same zone sometimes, some of them may have different hours between elementary and a middle school. But the 30 minutes, we chose the one closest to the school day. So it might not be the earliest one. It might be one of the other ones. That 30 minutes of the flash. And then once the flashers go off, when the students are in the seats, Monday through Friday, with the exception of holidays and weekends, that if it's 30 miles an hour, if they're over 41, it's still running. The flashers are not going, obviously, because the speed limit has gone back to its normal 30. And then the last 30 minutes of the day there after the dismissal, we'll be back to 15.
And just to clarify, so it's just during the school day when students are at the school.
Correct. It's not overnight. It's not in the evening during dinner time. It's,
You take a chance with it might be a school holiday.
no, you have to notify the vendor and make sure they're up to speed with
but
the
it's a
calendar.
driver, yeah.
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, I drive an unmarked police car, and even in my personal vehicle, when I'm coming through a school zone, even in Fort Lauderdale, and I know they don't even have them up, I'm seeing feedback signs, and it's already in my brain to hey, where am I? Slow down, because you get on autopilot. But even in our own city school zones, we're noticing that we ourselves are a little more attentive, and I think that's a huge plus to the program.
The 30 minutes before and after, you can ticket to the posted speed.
And during the day. So
And through the day,
And
yes.
between the, okay.
So let's say they start school at 7 o'clock. At 6:30 in the morning, that 30 minutes, you've got to be in the 15-mile-an-hour zone. If you're 11 above that, it'll ticket you. And then during the day at 7 o'clock, when the students are in session, you got to go to the 30 if that's what's posted. 41, you'd get ticketed. And then that 30 minutes, the end of the day at 3 o'clock to 3:30, he got 15, and then it's cut after that.
And I don't think every city is doing it during the school day. They're at least during the flashing signals.
That's an option that they have.
It's a little confusing, yeah.
Can I also clarify, is the 11 dictated by the statute, the 11 over?
I believe it's 10.
Jonathan, you're.
Sorry.
So I'm confused still.
Just don't speed.
Maybe it does. I don't even know how to answer the question. First of all, let me just say, I love this law. I love the program. That's great. So don't get me wrong. But what I'm reading here, it seems like that the speed limit, the posted speed limit, the standard posted speed limit can be enforced with camera enforcement, I guess, with the policy of the city. If you're going 11 miles over the posted speed limit on a Saturday.
Negative,
No.
no. Monday through Friday. On a
So see how
Saturday.
I'm confused.
It has to be a school day.
Okay, so
And
Monday through
school-
Friday.
School has to be in session. If it's a half day or teacher planning and students are out of the building at 12 o'clock, it's not running it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon like it normally would. Spring break, there's no enforcement for that school zone.
I guess my understanding was that this program could be used to camera enforcement. Cameras could be used to enforce speed limit during school zone time when the speed limit is 15 miles per hour.
Yes, and during the day while school is in session and students are present. Yes. It does include that.
Yeah, Jonathan, I had similar questions and I saw a news report. I live in Miami. And it sounded like they did the 15 miles per hour speed limit through the whole day. And so I checked with somebody there and they said, no, it's 50 mile per hour during the hours before and after school. It goes back to the normal speed limit during the day. We can enforce during the day, but then, yeah, not into the evening and night.
Mhm.
It's odd.
And I think one of the reasons for that, when they were talking about getting it through the legislation, was that there are students that leave throughout the day. Some of your high schools, the older students will leave for jobs and work studies and doctor's appointments.
Hey, again, I'm a fan. I wish we could use them all the time. You know, maybe one day we'll get there. But for me, it's confusing. And I hope that this confusion doesn't lead to the death of the program. But you're saying that's the way it's written right now. And so, okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. Christine and I had a conversation with our assistant chief who's working on the program. And one of the concerns he had or they're worried about is staffing to review the videos for enforcement. Does one of your staff do that, or is it the consultant that's doing that as the sworn officer?
So the vendor reviews before they send us the violations. The violations aren't official until we review them. We look at the evidence and, there's no issue with what we see there. And then it has to be someone who's step certified that reviews and ultimately approves or rejects that violation.
And is that one person you talked about that's doing that, or is that somebody else?
Yes, but we'll also use like our traffic CSOs who are certified to do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
So Karen, it sounds like there's a first step with the vendor to
Yep.
pull out the violations and then gives the violations to the city. So hopefully it's less than watching all of them.
It makes
Yes.
me a little nervous knowing where the red light cameras went last time of if somebody who's not a sworn officer is reviewing stuff,
Well,
it might be challengeable. But I guess if the actual tickets are only issued by sworn officers, then that's where you're okay.
Well, the notices of violation are the ones that are not attached to their driving record or history, right? Now, if they don't take care of that within the allotted time frame, then it does turn into a UTC. And that has to come back to us and it's reviewed. Right now, the only person we have working on those is, he's retired cop. He's the manager that oversees the unit. And he's working also hand in hand with the vendor to make sure that all the processing of that ticket, right? Because they're having to create it, because they're not, this isn't big in Florida yet. So there's a lot to go through and organize, but those are probably our slowest processed ones because we want to make sure those are right. Because that, you know, to get somebody's license suspended over that is, we don't want that.
What is a UTC?
Uniform traffic citation?
Thank you.
One more. The one I've been reading about in Miami that's causing some controversy is like the school bus camera enforcement.
Hmm.
Is that any Broward County cities doing that we're aware of?
I don't have anything other than conversations that I've had with individuals at the bus depot, if I could call it that. And they are looking at the program. Are they anywhere near launching it? I don't believe so. Like, I wouldn't expect to see that this year. And my understanding of some of the issues in Dade County, from what we heard through discussion, related to the way that statutes were written for the medians and whether or not they were curbed or not curbed and so on and so forth. So I believe that's where they had some issues, and they did ultimately pull part of that program while they worked that out.
And for from our Broward County side, sentence, is that something that Broward County School Board would be in charge of if something of that nature would be deployed, or would that be a local municipality? Because I believe the school buses are owned by the county, I would assume, or the school or county or the school board or whatever. Yes.
I think there has to be some kind of agreement with the municipalities as well, because those violations and where they occur. So like I said, talks haven't expanded on that. It's still very new for them, but I do know they're looking at that program.
Okay. And Carmelo or Mintang or Bill said, DF or Richard, do you know anything about Broward County and where they are with that, or is that starting, not starting? No idea. I see some head nods. I'm assuming no. Okay.
I would like to add, though, I looked up the state statute and it says in excess of 10 miles per hour.
My slide's wrong, sorry.
And it also says, what Lieutenant had said before, the school zone limit, which occurs within 30 minutes before through 30 minutes after the start of the regular scheduled breakfast program. It also says B, occurs within 30 minutes before through 30 minutes after the start of the regular scheduled school session. C, it says, let's see. There's another one that also says regularly scheduled hours, as were mentioned. But if anybody wants to look it up, it's chapter 316, and then so 316.1896 for reference.
Let's just say, is it because it is 10 miles hour over, so one extra mile is why it's 11. That was agreed on.
Tracy?
I have a question. I think a big confusing for the time period when there's no, it's not active school zone, but it's actually a school day. And when the school in session. And so you have to know exactly the school time. And or if that's I imagine myself driving, if people don't have a kid, they don't know that's a school or that's like a teacher's planning day. So they will think they still should follow the 10 miles over or close to 15 miles per hour, right? How about there's the one, they know, like a parent, they know exactly that day is a school off day. And so they drive at 30. And this kind of speed differential will cause a rear end crash for sure. So if they get a ticket for that, that would be a concern. Because that requires everybody to know,
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, but this is just my opinion. There's a posted speed limit. If you just adhere to the speed limit, you don't have to worry about the ticket.
Yeah,
And if you don't adhere to the ticket, whether it's a student or a parent, especially if it's a student, I'm sure the student will pretty quickly find out once the parent receives the ticket that to drive the speed.
that speed differential, it happens in or out of school zones. I don't know. Yeah, it's your choice to drive the speed limit or not. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I mean, if, someone drive, we both drive at speed limit. One is 30 during that time school off, right? Another one doesn't know, they still drive at 15 in front of that vehicle driving at 30 miles per hour, you suddenly slow down.
Oh, the 15 though, that's usually there's flashing signals, right? Is that required or not necessarily?
No, that's part of we're trying to make sure all of our school zones are looking the same, but it's my understanding that county controls the flashing lights. And like I know Colbert Elementary, there's no flashing lights. It's just a sign with times. It's still enforceable. But we're
So you might be saying that, Tracy, we need to be a little more standardized with our.
But if you have flash on, everybody understand that's a school zone,
Yeah.
50 miles per hour, but if you don't, that would be very confusing. Right, especially when.
Yeah, so you're going the opposite way. I thought you were saying going 15 over 30. You're
Right.
saying going.
If somebody familiar with it, still drive up 15 and somebody else doesn't know. It's a teacher playing day, they may drive at 30. So that's kind of speed differential, well, for the rear and the crash.
Making sure as well that the signage, the time, it's clear, right? It's visible, right?
And then you also kind of judge based on your surrounding environment. So. Richard?
Yeah. Is there standard advanced signing like photo enforced or something? In other words, beside the flashing, your speed is your speed, speed radar signs. In other words, given, you always seen that with the red light cameras. So you kind of know, is I think, standard signage. Oh, okay, I get it. And then then maybe they'll learn, even with that, the flashing, your speed is this. So it's kind of reinforcement before you get into that zone.
Yeah, that was one of the big reasons for the push for that speed feedback sign ahead of the zone. And then there is signage that says that it's a photo enforced zone.
Great, thank you.
Good discussion. Thanks. So let's talk about resources really quick. City of Hollywood mentioned when I met with them that their team is Lieutenant Sherry here, as well as 6 traffic officers, and then they have 3 community service officers. So they have a total of 10 traffic enforcement out of the whole city, which is many more. Their main duties are traffic homicide investigations, school zone enforcement, and then other traffic enforcement needs like speed zones, right? And so thinking about kind of what are the total needs of a city versus because we're thinking about reducing our killed and serious injury to 0. We have really high KSIs in our cities, and our allocation of resources, people, seem to be very limited. So really having that discussion about if we can prevent killed and serious injuries from happening, how do we reallocate or target those resources to be more effective towards reducing our killed and serious injury crashes? So just wanted to kind of have that conversation. I also met with the city of Fort Lauderdale, as Karen mentioned. They have a little bit bigger team. They have 12 traffic enforcement officers. They have 6 separate traffic homicide investigators that are full-time. They also have 4 DUI officers. So they're doing a little bit different makeup than Hollywood. So obviously each city is unique and what their needs are. The assistant chief mentioned that they have an aggressive driving action campaign on Sister Boulevard, which I'm very excited about because that's one of our priority corridors, one of the deadliest streets in Broward for the city streets. So what are they doing? They're doing message boards out there at first that say, slow down. We have an enforcement campaign happening. Then they're going to do an education stops for a week. So if they see aggressive driving, they'll stop and do warnings. And then they'll do full enforcement day and night for 3 weeks total to try to obviously change behavior and get better outcomes. So that was one program I was really excited to hear. Karen, you wanted to add?
We didn't talk about the public service aids, but I know we do have them as
Oh, good.
well for minor crashes and things that happen. So I don't know how many we have.
Okay. So it's interesting. We were talking about the DUI task force. And, again, I'm sorry, I'm going back to this dashboard, but you could go on the dashboard, click alcohol related, City of Fort Lauderdale, and you could get a map of where the crashes are happening related to alcohol and send your officers there. I mean, like, it seems so great. So I just wanted just to say that we've got a lot of tools. I point to the pamphlet, I point to the website, we've got the dashboard. I know resources are always scarce with our agencies. So how do we just basically direct those resources using all these tools to get better outcomes, right? Karen, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else about the city. One thing that was interesting, I talked to Town of Davie Fire Rescue for a moment, and she was saying last year alone, they got 15,000 calls in 1 year. And that traffic crashes were maybe like the third highest, not the highest. I was assuming it was gonna be the highest. Of course, that's where my heart is, right? But they have a lot of calls just for the little town of Davie. City of Fort Lauderdale said they got 220,000 calls in 2024. And I got my calculator out, good engineer. They have 575 police officers. So if you calculate 220,000 calls divided by 575 police officers divided by
shifts and
365
simple
days.
engineering math. There's shifts and
It's-
different stuff like that. yeah.
So anyway, they had just have it's interesting of just the resources based on the calls and how they identify. So thinking about kind of how do we just strategically use our resources better is really the conversation I just wanted to bring to light today. And what tools can we, the Safety Action Plan team, help provide to you as a municipality so you can have those conversations with your traffic enforcement and provide tools basically so that we can do better things together. So I just also wanted to bring up the funding what grant funding is available. FDOT does the high visibility enforcement grants. The Broward Sheriff's Office did the Operation Lifesaver grant for the rail a few years ago, where they did a blitz for 30 days of really like intense. And they had 0 fatalities on rail for the next 3 months. So it was really effective. I didn't know if there was other opportunities that you all were aware of that you wanted to share so we can get more funding for safety. Katie Cares this morning from FDOT mentioned there's I wrote it down, highway safety improvement plan for enforcement and education and public engagement. So that's also available. I think she said the grants are submitted in February. So we missed it this year, but keep that in mind for next year. The high visibility enforcement, she clarified, you have to be on like a bad list, like you're one of the worst to get the money. So if you're not on the list, good news, you're not on the list. But if you're on the list, please ask for the money because we need it in Broward to get to our goals. I didn't know if there's any other stories you guys wanted to share about, I don't know, DUI seems really, when we have spring break and we have, New Year's Eve and things like that, people are doing DUI. Lieutenant, I don't know if you have any DUI blitzes that you program.
Or through our impaired driver grant, we're currently in our should have Ubered op. That kicked off last week. So every weekend moving forward for the next month, we're hoping to use that there and put the resources out in our hotspots for that.
I'm sorry, what does that look like though?
Well, trying to identify our target areas where we have those accidents that DUIs are involved in those. Our aggressive driving, right? We target places where we have the local clubs and nightclubs and establishments that are serving later into actually early into the morning. You've got 441, we know about Sterling Road and Sheridan Street and Hollywood Boulevard and 441. But we've also got, Ocean over there off the beach and, watching the events that are coming north and south of us to see where the people are going to travel. We like to say everything comes through Hollywood for some reason, but sometimes we're wrong. And then the other thing that we're also targeting, which we can't do with that impaired driver, is those intersection takeovers. That's another hot topic for us. So.
Oh, with the motorcycles.
No, cars.
It's an intersection takeover.
Well, they'll commandeer an intersection and stop all the traffic and spin around in circles. And sometimes light fireworks and shoot guns. Yes. Well, if you see the dark circles in the middle of the roadway, just all of a sudden, Yeah, we call it training for the intersection takeovers. Yes. But no, they will do it. They've done it on the interstate. They've done it at, major intersections. Big one they like to use is just east of 14th off of Sheridan Street. And it's just, yeah, damages the roadway, and it's not a good thing, but it's very hard to combat.
And many of these takeovers have like hundreds of people that show up, so there's a huge group of people that do this. But I believe there was some pretty aggressive legislation that was passed in order to protect law enforcement when they do interact with these folks, and I think the punishments were raised as well, right?
Yeah, they did. They did make some improvements there. The hard part is getting them to stop. That's the hard thing. So a lot of it is going into after the fact and trying to use digital evidence to identify who these drivers are. And, and there's different task force throughout the counties that will, chat as things are going on and pass intel up and down based on where things are scheduled or where they're noticing things. But it is very difficult to get those.
This might be dated, but when you do DUI, are you still doing like stop where you like block the road and like talk to
Like a
everybody?
checkpoint? No, we're
Checkpoint.
not doing a checkpoint right now.
That's not current.
Not in our current.
How do
next
you do
month's plan.
DUI? Is it just patrolling and watching?
Trying to pick up those impaired drivers. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Excellent. Questions? No? Okay, we'll move on. All right, so the next topic is really talking about post-crash care. I think this group, we've kind of struggled with like, what does that look like and feel like? Within our plan, we have a couple of things that support that. So number one was through technology. We have preemption in Broward County. That map on the right, we created in partnership with Broward County Traffic. The light blue dots are existing preemption devices. And then the corridors that are identified are corridors where we cross-reference the response time. You can see in the legend where there's kind of devices missing, if that makes sense. So opportunities to put in new devices. So opportunities identified. The second thing we said was to kind of meet regularly with the safety team to make sure that we're discussing opportunities to collaborate, because obviously technology is changing every year. There's opportunities every year. So really just kind of keep that conversation going. Another thing is, in addition to the technology on the signalizations, we also have the TMC where they're reporting crashes, right? FDOT and Broward County have the TMC here on Commercial Boulevard. So that was another idea that I was like, I think that's also, right, helping us get our emergency vehicles to crashes. Are there other things that I'm not thinking of that you all can think of that we're doing? Is that?
One of the things that I was informed of several years back, related to post-crash care was really, with paramedics and, specifically for motorcycle crashes, since motorcycle crashes tend to have high pelvic injuries. I was told that the best practice was to not move the person until you can put them on one of those boards. Because if you try to move somebody who has a pelvis injury and possibly broken bones, you could rupture one of the essential organs. So I believe that there's literature on that. If not, University of Miami or Jackson Memorial Hospital used to have, probably still does, has a motorcycle program. It used to be led by Dr. Patty Byers and her team. So she might be a good resource with kind of spreading some information to EMTs, fire, even police. Might be a good piece of information to put out there.
Excellent. And I know we have some of our health partners on the phone. Basil stepped away from his desk, but if you have questions or want to add, please just raise your hand and we'll unmute you. James is there. And then the other thing that we hear a lot about is don't put in speed management because it's going to slow down my emergency vehicles. So I just wanted to talk about having the discussion with between our fire chiefs and our engineers about having those discussions about how can we get creative to kind of meet and balance both those desires of reducing crashes, but also supporting emergency response. So I just showed a couple of pictures here. We've got the speed cushions or pillows that have the space for the large vehicles to straddle. in our neighborhoods. The one in the middle is a pilot truck apron that was done on East Broward Boulevard at Southeast 15th Avenue in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know if you can see it because the shadow, but basically the car, the Mercedes in the picture, goes around the bump, and then the truck can obviously follow the curb line, right? And it's got a slight like bump to it so that if you do go around it, you're slowing as you go around it, right? So similar to like the inside of a roundabout, right? You have a truck apron on the inside so that the larger trucks can still mount it, but they're going slow, right? And the regular cars are going slow around the outside. On the right, I'm showing dedicated shared lanes for emergency vehicles. This is a topic, it's basically as we create more dedicated space, like for bikes or for buses. I know we're in the midst of talking about dedicated bus lanes. A lot of agencies are doing shared emergency and multimodal lanes. This is a picture from 4th Avenue, north of Sunrise Boulevard, where the outside lane was repurposed with a 6-foot buffer and a 6-foot bike lane. So you've actually got 12 foot of space. If needed, an emergency vehicle could take that lane, right? So thinking more creatively about how we use our space. This morning, Katie Cares, again with FDOT, brought up like, we're talking about vertical protected bike lanes. So Christine, if I had raised that 6-foot buffer, you wouldn't be able to fit an ambulance there. So thinking about if we wanted to share the space, how could we re-engineer that vertical element? I know I just saw a ribbon cutting up in Palm Beach County where FDOT put in a raised separator. I think it's 2 foot wide on a 6-lane corridor. And so if you think about this space, if you just put in a 2 foot, a 10-foot wide would be wide enough, right? Or if you want to do a 2-way cycle track with a 2-foot separator in the middle, it could be a median, but nothing vertical so that you could straddle that. So really thinking about what's the context, what's the need, and then balancing all those countermeasures to meet all those needs. But I've heard a lot of people say, you know, my fire chief just said no. So I really wanted to give kind of, you know, let's have a conversation about what's possible and how do we kind of meet all the needs. We were on a webinar yesterday. Vision Zero Orlando hosted a discussion, and the San Francisco was on the call presenting about how they did a study of emergency services, well, fire specifically, on parallel routes where they had like a 4-lane corridor and a 4-lane corridor that had done a road diet with, you know, on-street parking and things like that. And so they tested how long it took to get down both corridors. They were both the same length. They were both the same number of lanes. And they did several different parallel routes, and they saw there was really not a big change in the emergency response time. That it was really not a great change. So they were able to use the data to tell the story that it wasn't really affecting. And then they could have discussions about kind of what's working, what's not working. So I think there's going to be more and more studies out there as, you know, as a national best practice, we're trying to do more safety. We're trying to do more speed management to achieve our safer streets. And so having those dialogues and having those tools, I'd really like to integrate a lot of these tools into our Safe Streets Design Manual that we're currently drafting. And so really hearing from you what the concerns are so that we can put those countermeasures and those discussions into the manual so that they can be useful for all of you as we move forward beyond the planning phase. So any thoughts? You want to?
I wasn't sure if you mentioned it before. Part of the webinar that we attended yesterday, there was somebody from Seminole County. And I'm going to mention this approach again. This is our second meeting, so I wasn't sure if we already talked about it here. So stop me if we did. But in Seminole County, they have an approach where they monitor the travel time for an emergency vehicle to a certain destination. And then with the traffic calming measures, the traffic calming can't add more than a minute to their travel time. So let's say there's a speed table that adds 3 seconds and there's something else that adds 10 seconds, but based on a certain metric, it can't add more than a minute. And then that can help determine the amount of traffic calming measures to put in. what encouraged me about that was what Christine was mentioning earlier, that it's not a question of an emergency responder saying, oh, this delays me, you can't do this. There's a delay, but there's a certain acceptable amount of, because there's trade-offs, for the speed tables and such. And so does anybody, I don't know if that's something unique to Seminole. Has anybody heard of something like that anywhere else? Is that something we might want to see about pursuing here? So nobody. Okay. Yeah. So we'll maybe have to tap into the gentleman from Seminole. Yeah, and maybe some of the lessons learned on how they had to figure that out. So, Eric?
Talking about response times?
Yeah.
They map their response times, everyone wants to be under 6 minutes. So if you're adding to the response time, they know what their response time is for every location.
Okay. And the odd thing was, I think in the example that they gave, it was a 9-minute response time. It was like the furthest building from
Here,
there.
we want to be 6 minutes.
Okay, no, but
I don't know what Orlando is. I just know here we want to be 6 minutes. They could be 9.
But do we have emergency facility space that the response time is only going to be 6 minutes to anywhere? For example, if under optimum conditions, your response time is 10 minutes, how are you going to make it 6?
That's what the goal is. That's what the goal is. You don't know what the traffic's going to be.
Okay. So this was it's related to response time, but maybe slightly different, where they looked at their facility and the furthest building, and the optimal travel time is 9 minutes.
And this is where and again, I don't know what their range is. So I just, that's what BSO wants, is 6 minutes. And so that's where they'll justify needing a station, needing another vehicle, based on that number. That's how they'll justify where locations for service need to be.
Oh, so they might add new facilities.
That's one of the ways that they go about doing that. So maybe they have a larger range. They might, I don't know what they're particularly doing.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Yeah,
So that's what BSO is doing.
The other interesting thing about Seminole County was that they assigned a standard delay per traffic calming measure. And I wonder if that's ever been something any of you all have ever heard of, like, oh, if you have a speed table, it's going to have 3 seconds. And that's how you determine what your delay would be, depending upon your countermeasures based upon the existing response time to a specific location.
And my concern is being in a position where the emergency responders can veto any traffic calming. And if you'll indulge me with an insight, that 6-minute response time, I don't know if anybody remembers, about 20 years ago, Broward County Commission set a goal to be able to get anywhere in the county in 20 minutes. I don't know if that's possible.
None of it's possible in rush hour, right? But
it's possible. It's not possible during.
Right. But these are the arguments that like fire will make.
You remember
when something new is coming, like 10th Street. We've been all these conversations about 10th Street, and like, well, how do we respond to 10th Street? We can't get there in time. And now we're creating a new, slip lane into 95, just for those reasons.
But I'm just wondering if the 6-minute target is a realistic, or
no, that's the goal. That's like your goal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but so going back, the idea
that comes down actually to not fire. It comes down to, how long you can be without oxygen. They come down to this.
Okay. That's a different thing. Okay. But I also am wanting to figure out how not to have emergency responders veto any traffic calming ever, anywhere, anytime. Because then they might not have to go as often as.
I'll tell you a quick story, not to take much time. Like, we did the Hillsborough Boulevard, suicide lane reductions. Right? Yeah. That was a big project. And we had a lot of complaints, not just from BSO Fire, BSO Police, because they want to be able to zip through, those areas. We still require that they review that with us. They've never had one problem on Hillsborough Boulevard in the 6 years that we've had it. So they'll make those arguments, but you can show them in a similar way. Like, we have the bike lane, they can utilize the bike lane. My only concern about like this one on the right is that if I'm doing the speed limit, somebody doesn't want to be doing the speed limit, he's just going to zip around this. So there's got to be something in between,
Nope, and that's something that we've even seen on some of our projects, like on Wilton Drive, on Sunset Strip and Sunrise, where if the bike lane is too wide, it's either becomes a turn lane, it becomes a impromptu Amazon parking lane, or a drop off or DoorDash drop off lane, or it becomes a pass through lane, right?
Excellent. Anybody online questions?
Desiree, Sasha, or Rachel, would you like to say anything? And if you would like to, feel free to unmute yourself.
Do you have any other slides, Christine?
Couple more.
Okay, we can keep going.
Okay, just
No,
the finishing.
What's mine? Yeah. so-
Yeah, okay. I'll just hand it back to James to talk about kind of where we go from here.
So earlier on, I said we might get out of here early, and think we might get out of here early. When you all, most of you volunteered to be on this committee. A few got assignments, but we're glad you're here. And we appreciate, I think I noticed a difference by having a committee where people wanted to be here as opposed to being assigned. We've had much better attendance than committees where somebody's forcing them there. So we've had this technical working group that's been meeting monthly since January. Yeah, I was trying to remember if it was February 1st. January 2024. We've had our oversight committee that meets quarterly. And today was the last meeting on their calendar. We added a few extra meetings to the calendar for the technical working group through July. But we're coming to the point where this group, as it is presently constituted, does not necessarily need to continue in this way, because we'll be completing the safety action plan and we'll be moving into the implementation and reporting back to our partners at the federal government. So one of the programs that we need to make sure that we set up to comply with the funding that we received for the safety action plan is have a group that meets to a group to review the reports that we send back to the feds to talk about our progress. And so I can't remember if it said oversight committee in the documentation or not, but we need to have a group that does that. And we have proposed that they meet annually. They can maybe meet more often, but the idea is to have probably some of the members of this group and some members of the oversight committee that would be willing and interested in being part of an annual or semi-annual review, whatever it is, to come back and kind of monitor the progress that we're moving forward. So we made that announcement to the oversight committee today, and we didn't ask them to volunteer right now. We said, we'll get back to you on that. And so I just wanted to plant the idea in your heads that this group will evolve. And if you want to continue to be involved, great. And if not, we really appreciate the time and the input that you've given us. But what we're looking to do is we have our monthly meetings for the technical working group through May, June, and July. We're almost there. Wow. Okay. I couldn't remember. So May, June, and July. July might not happen, but then what we're looking to do in September is have a big meeting as we've pulled everything together. We have the corridor concept plans. We have a bunch of other stuff. We have the final wording of what the safety action plan will be that goes back to the MPO board and the county commission. So we'll have all the concept together. We want to, how do we show 11 corridor plans? It's kind of like our focus plans. We don't want to tell you every single detail about those, but we may do some kind of an open house setting where we'll have tables and the roll plots are out and boards of some of this stuff and all these different things. And so we're looking at September, the third Wednesday, which is when we typically meet. Did we ever look up what that date is? And barring any hurricane. So anyway, the third Wednesday of September. What is it? Sorry, shouldn't have said that. And so we'll be looking to send out an invitation, get that set up. We may have some formal discussion here, but it's probably more likely to be a lot of group discussion. 17th. Yeah, I think we did look it up because that sounded familiar. And so what we've done with our meeting agenda is we will make it clear when we send it out that this will be either set up and then there'll be some virtual or not at all. We still want to maintain that option of doing workshops, and then we just need to make it clear in our announcements that part of the meeting won't be available through Zoom. And so that's a question that we'll have in September, but I'm imagining there'll be a lot of interactive stuff in September. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions. I don't know who wants to be the first to volunteer to be on that committee.
So,
Eric.
or Rachel Solomon online.
Okay.
That she would be interested in. Before we get too many other.
Oh, I wonder who was first, Rachel or Eric? And Paul, I told you not to raise your hand first, so that was, you know, you get a discount. Sorry, go ahead, Fazil.
We do have a new member that was added. That's a replacing Sierra, which he's right there too. It's gonna be Sebastian Arango, correct? From the City of Oakland Park and the Technical Working Group. So welcome.
Yeah.
As Christine just stated.
And by the way, I'm not sure who at the City of Oakland Park, but there are 4 cities that did receive funding to do safety action plans. And so they are tapping into the information that we have available. So Fort Lauderdale, Oakland Park, Hollywood, and Pompano Beach. And then Deerfield is continuing to do stuff. So we'll be seeing more of you in that regard too. So does that sound agreeable, the September meeting? Kind of celebrate, put a punctuation point at the end?
Yeah, James, did you say in the September meeting that we're gonna have the oversight committee meeting or the oversight committee members also attend?
If I didn't, I implied it, so.
Sorry.
No, I wasn't necessarily.
Wasn't always paying attention to what you're saying.
Well, we've been talking about it so much, so it's hard to remember what we actually said publicly and what's been behind the scenes, so. But the idea is that oversight committee and everybody, we could have one meeting together. All right. Does our budget allow? Yeah. I guess our budget does allow, well, anyway. And I, you know what? And thank you for mentioning that because the budget allows for food for like public meetings. And so this may be a question where we want to open it up to our electeds. That might be nice too. So our leadership. So no. On your budget. So, all right. Anything else from anybody then? With that, then our next meeting is May, June, and July. Oh, you have something?
Can I just thank Lieutenant for being here? I appreciate it. So, thank you. So, thank you all for being here. Happy spring. Enjoy your week. And we'll see you in May. Our next meeting is May 21st. So, enjoy this beautiful weather before it gets too hot.